Hey Instagram, we are back again for another Influence and Conversions interview. Really excited for today's guest. We have Allie Brown with us. And what I love about Allie is, first of all, her personality is amazing. And she really focuses on 7 and 8 figure women growing their legacy and helping them grow a really big and impactful legacy. And I absolutely love that. If you've been following me for a while, you know legacy is something I'm huge about, how you can pour into other people. So I'm going to be adding, we are going to dive into the conversation of how you should trust your own voice and not just be so worried about what is everybody else thinking, what do they have to say. Trust your intuition, which is really, really huge. And she's great when it comes to this. So we're just adding her ear here into the interview, and then we are going to get started. But type in the comments where you guys are tuning in from, where you're located. Really excited to have you here. This guest is going to be absolutely amazing. And we have a lot of guests that you guys can check out inside of my IGTV series. Hey, Allie, how's it going?
Hey, sorry, I had to switch networks. Are we good? We're
I
good?
think
We're
so.
live?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, fantastic.
Awesome. Well, Allie, super excited to have you on here. Before we really dive in to talk about how people should trust their own voice and their intuition, you're great when it comes to this. I'm so excited to have this conversation. I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so fun. The older we get, there's more to introduce, but I'll keep it brief because we all go through these evolutions, right? So a lot of people would call me one of the pioneers in the women's coaching space, especially online. I mean, I was rocking the training programs and stuff about like 15 years ago. So over many evolutions today, I am an exclusive coach for women who are in the 7 and 8 figure ranges and founder of The Trust, which is a new network specifically for those women.
I love it. And then why specifically the 7 and 8 figure women?
Yeah, it's interesting because I used to kind of shy away from that market, thinking, oh, it's too small. And I love those women, but there couldn't possibly be enough of a market to sustain, right? And then as I was observing the last several years, we saw two things. One is for me personally, I was attracting a lot of those women because they said, you know, I understand you've been through every evolution of your business. You're the one I want to coach with. You've reached these levels. And then they would ask, who else could I coach with or where could I go? And that led to the trust, which we'll talk about in a minute. But what was fascinating last year is Amex came out with a state of the women-owned businesses, that report they come out with. It's interesting. I think they're skipping 2020 or putting it off because it was kind of a mess. Yeah, I think their usual like algorithms are just like, we got to change it up. But it actually could be more encouraging than we thought. But that state of owned women businesses report, there's two fastest growing segments to women owned businesses in the US. And the first fastest growing was 25,000 and under. So that revenue window, a lot of startups, a lot of women starting businesses. I think we're going to see that even increase this past year. The second fastest growing is the $1 million plus women. And when I saw that, I knew, oh my gosh, you know what? This is actually a market that is actually underserved because there hasn't been a new premier women's network, or, you know, you don't see a lot of that. Even aside, a lot of people focusing on that market. It's been kind of a market that people haven't touched because they thought the numbers are too small or they're too hard to reach. But man, now is the time. Now is the time.
I love that. I love that you're like, you know what? I'm not sure, but we're going to go in. And then now you've developed you call it the trust, the community you've developed. Before we really dive in, since we're on this train here, dive into what that community is. And then we'll really dive in how people can really trust their intuition like you did and moving forward with this.
Yeah. So sorry, starting with the community?
Start with the community. Yes, since we're still kind of on that.
Yeah. So I launched this at the beginning of 2020. And I did it because there had not been a new premier women's entrepreneur network created in over 20 years, which was mind blowing to understand. And what it is, it's a different flavor. There's a lot of great women's organizations out there. We're just a bit of a different one for more of the new media types. We have a span of industries, though. We have women in there for everything from commercial real estate to biotech, and also including a lot of the coach and consultants in different industries who've built really amazing ventures on the way. Average revenues in there are around 5 million, stretching up to 50 million. And it's jointhetrust.org.
I love that. And there's women in here that are actually on right now that I know that are going to be watching. So I've told them about this interview, and I'm like, trust me, this is a gem. Like you're going to want to learn more and get connected. So I definitely have quite a few connections when we jump off this for you, just to get people that need to be in that community because, like you said, like it's really underserved and it's growing very quickly. So that's why I love touching on that. But let's
Thank
dive
you.
into the intuition part and listening to your voice. A lot of people out there are listening to what the news says, their parents said, their friends, and this and that, and they're not trusting their own voice, which always causes them to question absolutely everything. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, we're at a time right now than more than ever in history. This is going to be critical to your success. What we're witnessing right now, and I know we don't have time to get too deep, on here, but I think your people get deep. We are going through a collective human evolution right now. There is and this is one of the reasons why when you look outside your door right now, there are things just blowing up, changing. Some things that are good, we're happy to see blow up, and some things we're not so sure. Well, wait, was that working? Was it not? But the opportunities are so incredible for this. But the main lesson in all this, when it comes to the human evolution part, and then leading that into your business, is that element of really listening to what you feel and feeling into your business more than ever. And if you had said something this like maybe 20 years ago, people would be like, yeah, okay. And you got to back up what you're doing with data and look for evidence that this is going to be successful and map out your strategy. But when you really think about feeling into where you feel like you should be, where your clients should be, and making decisions from those places. We've heard people talk about that. Remember, I've had the privilege of spending time with Richard Branson, heard him speak on this. And he said, early on in his career, he really made decisions from the gut. That's what you hear men say.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Actually, because he said he was dyslexic and couldn't even read a lot of these contracts. So he would feel into whether it was a good deal or not and really start trusting his intuition. It was a little ahead of its time. And right now we're really at that place that we need to do that, because there will be times right now that you don't have all the data, that you don't have information for even what you want to do or be, but you're going to be feeling into it, because a lot of the models are going to be gone or disrupted.
That's such a good point. I love that. And I remember years ago when I started trusting my own intuition, I'm like, I'm tired of listening to everybody else all the time. I'm like, there's a healthy dose of that, and then a healthy dose of, I just got to go for it. And am I right? Am I wrong? You learn either way.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
but ever since I really pressed in on that, I could even tell I definitely did that last year. So this year I'm like, wow, like I'm not obviously 100%, nobody is, but it feels so good to know when I move forward, there is a lot of like, I'm where I need to be. And that feels so good. And I hope and I wish that people can have that. And that's why I love this conversation,
Yeah.
because you were talking about earlier that there's so much information out there. Go on Google, everybody's telling you this, that, and the other thing. How do you know what's up from down? And what do you have to say for that as far as navigating through all those channels that we get hit with every day?
We've lost the ability to make decisions for ourselves. I
Mm.
mean, this is such a huge conversation around this that links to the intuition. There is so much information right now. Like, I know that even sometimes I'll be in front of a restaurant with my husband and it looks busy, looks great, but I need to get on Yelp for some reason and check the Yelp reviews, to make sure. Like,
Yeah.
we're always looking for this backup. And when you think back to Molly, I'm so glad that I started my business 20 years ago, I guess a little longer than that now, because I didn't have a lot of information to rely on, that I just went out in New York City and was walking into ad agencies and marketing my writing. And I just figured it out step by step. And I think today, the best thing you could do is, once you've made a decision and you pick a lane and you know what you're going to do, then gather information, right? Get the models, train with the right person who's in that lane. But don't lose that ability to feel into things and say, you know what, these things feel good and maybe this part doesn't, or I like this model, but I'm going to add something special that I know these people need to it. That's when the new models are born. So
Mm.
plugging into existing information and systems is brilliant when you're clear what you need to do for the short term, right? And maybe a little bit of long term. But things are changing so quickly right now that if you're not aware and conscious and feeling into things, you could get trapped. There's so many layers to this, but as far as business models, the biggest mistake I see is when people come in and sometimes they'll want some new ideas for their company, but man, they are locked into a model they can't get out of.
Yeah.
They're locked into a business model they can't get out of, and maybe a tool that was critical to being part of that model just blew up, or it's gone, or the ad algorithms changed, just all this stuff. So you got to stay so fluid right now, on purpose, but fluid. And the way you do that is remember to feel into things and step back and take a look and be aware.
Yeah, that is so important. That's how I feel in the industry that I'm in when it comes to marketing. Everybody gets a bad taste of like, oh, you're just trying to sell me, icky, icky. I'm all about, I want to get to know people. I want to build that relationship. I want to know there's probably something that you have that I'll need at some point and really build those connections. And that's where I really get my intuition is like, okay, I want to get to know this person. Like for this interview, for example, for everybody that's watching, I do a pre-interview chat with every person to get to know them, build that rapport, whether they want to do it or not. They're like, can we hurry up with this?
It
But I'm
was
like,
funny. My team's like, this thing with mom. I'm like, isn't the thing next week? They're like, no, no, no. I'm like, oh, okay. And because it was busy. I'm like, she seems nice, but like, and then that made such a difference though, didn't it? In
yes.
in knowing that what was coming on the interview, we made that pre-connection. And I think skills like that right now and in the future are going to be coveted more than ever. People are looking for human touch, human connection, human gathering. These connections is the best we can do online right now, but it's going to make such a huge, huge difference. I'm really glad, we pulled our kids out of school this year because it was just
Mm.
getting weird. There's just weirdness. I'm like, it's a weird year anyway. Let's do weirdness at home, right? I mean, just pulled them out. And we were talking about this, and Brett, my husband, and I were saying, this may not be their best academic year, in general, but the skills they're learning being around us more here and running the business and hearing the
Mm.
conversations and the travel we're able to do. And I mean, the being able to connect with all kinds of people and introduce yourself and have conversations and be listening. And there's going to be a huge shift coming up, with all the AI and tech and all this stuff. And then the people who still have the skills to connect in a human way. And so that's a great example, Molly, what you did of standing out and making something that everyone else is doing a little better by just taking a few extra minutes and connecting.
Right. And I tell people, I'm like, trust me, I'll be short and sweet. Your time is valuable, as is mine. We'll get to the point. But then, even for you, for example, learning what you do, I know quite a few women that are in that bracket that are looking for certain things that maybe I don't have. And I love being able to be a resource and just a referral connector. Honestly, I love doing that, like through and through. And Tara, who keeps popping up in the comments, Tara Aldridge, she's absolutely amazing. Same person. She's like, yes, I love that you're taking the time. I had an interview with her, I believe it was last week or the week before. So I'm just grateful that you took the time. I know how busy you are, but that human connection right there makes all the difference. Even though you're like, ugh, can we just hurry this up? But that real piece right there,
I
it
never
just,
said that. I was just confused. I was
oh,
confused.
I'm not saying you are. I've had people that'll be like, really, do I have to? And I'm like, well, if you don't want to, we don't have to do this. But
Yeah.
my only requirement is that we take that time in the beginning, to be honest. So I know that, a little bit more, a little bit know a little bit more about you. And then it's not going to be a huge pitch fest because I've had a couple people on here where I'm like, oh, I didn't dig deep
Yeah.
enough. And that's okay. I'm not going to be 100% across the board. But back to
Yeah.
the intuition part, me getting to know somebody like that, like I'm like, okay, perfect. So I'm on par with who I want to share with the world and my audience of like, this is somebody of value and of substance and I vouch for them. So go for it. I'm already kind of doing the
Hmm.
digging so they know, okay, Molly really is good when it comes to people. I can trust this person to another level before I, end up chatting with them. And so that's
Yeah.
why I really appreciate what you're saying because we are going into a really, really heavy technology age. We got bots, we got VAs, we got all this automatic stuff. And there's a time and a place for that, but we should never lose that human connection. And I would love for you to speak on that because you're in a place where you're connecting with, or you're supporting rather, 7, 8, probably even 9-figure women. And do they still value those pieces even at that level?
Oh yeah, more than ever, actually. It's interesting because I saw, and I do see a lot of people still focusing on information and training, and that's how I got started. And again, we need that. Like I taught the online success blueprint for years. If some of you are watching, I mean, that was way back. And so, information and online programs have their place. But I found that as you get, it's cliche, but it's lonely at the top. We've all heard that. And there are probably, if you're watching this right now and you've reached those levels or you're on the brink and you're starting to feel this, there are maybe platforms or circles or networks you're a part of that you're like, gosh, I still love these people, but maybe I'm helping them out a lot more. And maybe I'm not, maybe there's some things I need to share and get help on that I'm not even, ready to share with these people. I need to talk to some other women who are at these levels and doing this stuff. And the conversations, it's amazing because they're very business focused conversations, but we also have very personal conversations in there. I mean, these women are, many of the husbands actually also work in the companies with their wives, and so that's a whole other show.
Yes.
They need their own group. We have a spouse day at our events now. It's awesome. The guys
I love that.
They go. It's like the old thing but switched, right? And it's what they want is the connection. We actually have an event coming up in 10 days in Miami, and most of the members are coming. They said because we really miss that human gathering. We're in a great venue that we can all sit spaced out. People could be comfortable, whatever they like. But just being there in that room together, there's a separate energy that's created from that is unlike anything you can achieve online. This is great, but it's just a whole other level. And they really, that's why they're in the group. It's that connection and the support that they lend to each other.
I love that. I love that it's just like, you know what? We need that because there's nothing that will ever match that kind of energy of getting in the room and just being around those people and just feeling it and then just having that sense of normalcy again too. I love the online space, but I live in California where it might be a little bit longer for these in-person events, but there's other places around the country where they're just growing. And I love that you're just going forward with that. And that's really the temperature of your group. They're like, we need this. This is what we're craving because they want to be able to keep pushing the needle forward no matter what's happening around them. And I absolutely love that because they're listening to their intuition. Look, don't be scared. Everything's going to be okay. You properly space out masks or whatever it is that you're going to do, whatever they want. But they're like, this is a non-negotiable. This is so important. So I love that
they know what they need.
That. Yeah.
Yeah. And also some of them they're like, I just need to get away from my kids and my husband.
Too much time
a long year. Totally. They're like, I'm there. They're like, you don't have to convince me. They're on the plane. So yeah, it's that. And so I really, I think if you're able to have small gatherings, I think the small gatherings and small groups especially are going to be the future. Because it may be the reality for a while. We can't have these big events like we used to, but B, it's because that it just is a different connection. It's a more personal connection where you're able to have those conversations in a smaller, intimate group.
I love it. Hey, whether there's 5 people, 500 people in the room, there's still people in the room. I'm in. I'm there. Yeah. I'm in. Allie, thank you so much for coming on today. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they've really resonated with you today? Because I know there are quite a few comments that were in this chat that we didn't even get to. But what's the best place that people can connect to you?
Yeah, you can DM me here on Instagram or alliebrown.com, jointhetrust.org. And I also have a podcast, Glambition Radio. So be sure to, if you enjoyed the conversation today, you'll love that show on Apple.
Awesome. Allie, thank you so much. And for everybody that's watching live and the recording, really appreciate you guys hopping on today. So until next time, everyone, we'll see you then. Bye.